Cool, so let's continue, and I'm gonna lower the resolution. Let's multiply this by 5. Okay, and let's import our velocity from the pump source. So I'm gonna create a fluid source volume, sorry, and let's connect that. Let's use a merge node. And here I'm going to change it to pump and use the pump. Cool, and let's take a look and see what we've got. And let's increase it. I think it's adding some stuff, but I'm not sure yet because of all the stuff happening here, so I'm going to turn all this off completely. I'm going to focus on this, so let's increase it to 100. Cool, so you can see it's shooting outward as it gets older, and that's because of the source blending towards the other direction. Cool. Getting there. Now I feel like I think there is another force somewhere. Yep. So there is this option here to add wind tunnel to the entire sim. I had this on, so let me turn this off and then we'll take a look at that later. So let's hit play again. And I'm not liking the directional source actually. I want it to be more outward. So let me try set this to -100 just to be sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the vel. I'm going to turn off that blend in. I'm going to simply compute the difference and use that throughout the sim. And the original source has the velocity. If we wanted to use that, we can still inject it from the main source as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the source again. And now we should have velocity pointing outward all the time. And let me rewrite this as V2 and save it to disk. And let's wait for it to finish. It shouldn't take too long. At least doing it twice. Cool. And let's reload. Let's reload the geometry. And this is more like it. This is basically more what I'm looking for. You can see the force is pointing outward. Yeah. So let's take a look. See how that improved the sim. It's pretty much done now. We're at this guy. Sorry, sometimes it gets confusing. And let's set this to 10. Cool. So the source is regenerated. And I think the velocity is much better now. You can see it pushing in various directions. Cool. Let's increase this to 100. Yep. So we're going to leave that, and then let's introduce some of the original source velocity so it pushes outward as well. That's probably too much, so let's set it to 0.1. Sorry, this is 10. The original source has the velocity pointing outward, or following the path of the sim. It's still too high. Let's lower this. 0.5 and this to 15. Cool. I just wanted to get something in the beginning, that's all. Okay, so now how do we get from this to which one? To this. Well, the idea is pretty simple. We're going to use our setup. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to copy, or actually let's take a look and see what's going to happen now. So I want to use the temperature or the length of the noise mask that we're creating using the gradient and all the good stuff. I'm going to use the length of that to inject that into the divergence, and I'm also going to inject it into the temperature, and I will display the temperature now here. Let's set it to 10. Okay, so you can see we have some information coming there. It's not too much, but there is some data. Now let's inject that into the divergence. Right now it's set to 1, so I'm going to animate that. Let's say 12. Let's go to frame 13 and let's set it to 0. And we should see some expansion happening. Not so much happening. Okay, so let's dive in here and see. So it looks like this data is not, there's not so much happening that is injected into the divergence. And what I like to do is, if we look at the source, the primary thing that we have here is the actual density. So if we take a look, you can see this information is moving along, and if we take that and inject it into the sim, we can cause the tendrils or the projectile to expand correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind import the density. I'm going to add a multiplier just in case I want to reduce this. I'm going to call it density mult, and I'm going to add this to the div divergence temp field, which is again used by both the divergence and the temperature. So let's take a look. That should be correct, and let's set this to 1, so we copy 100% of the density every frame into the divergence. Now we're copying too much. Set this to 8, and let's lower this to 0.1, so we copy 10%. Cool. I want to get the expansion at the center basically. Let's copy this to copy 0.25 only. Cool. You can see now it's expanding just a tiny bit, and it's going to go upward because of the temperature that we're copying, which could be interesting, so we'll leave that. Actually, I'm going to increase this a bit, and let's multiply the gradient. I want more noise, and I want this guy, where is it? I want to multiply this even higher, the directional force. Because remember, we're using the velocity, and if we don't have anything moving, everything is being multiplied by the speed of the velocity, and if nothing is moving, we're not really affecting anything. Now everything looks blown up, so let's fit the range of this guy between 0 to 50, 20. Let's copy this, paste it here. Cool. Cool. So now it's emitting a lot of temperature, and that's causing it to rise too much. I don't want the rising effect to happen. So here I'm going to lower the temperature. In the source, I'm going to copy only 10%. I don't need a lot of temperature. I'm going to lower the cooling rate. It's fine. I'm going to lower this to 2. And let's take a look. Cool. So you can see the expansion happening at the center here. And this is pretty much the same thing that I did here. I just spent, it's actually the same setup. I just went a little bit more aggressive in the beginning, and I didn't intend this effect. I wanted something along these lines that only generates stuff at the center. But this one has a lot more tendrils. As you can see, there's a lot more spikes, which we're going to do as well. Okay, let's take a look at this blob and see what kind of information it has. Cool, so we have, there's the tendrils, and then it's expanding and going upward. Now I'd like to add some of that temperature back. I want it to rise a little bit. So let's set this to 0.4. And here in the velocity, I'm actually going to lower this because the volume is not moving too much, so we need to capture more. And worst case, I may turn off this completely because I don't want to affect only the fast moving part. Everything is moving at the same rate at the moment. Cool, so we have more expansion going, and with this sim, the higher the resolution, the more we're going to capture, the more details we're going to get. Because right now it's missing, the voxels are missing capturing some of that information in, and that's not being injected into the sim. Okay, so I think we're getting there. I'm gonna increase the noise amplitude, and I think I'm gonna turn off the velocity multiplier here. I'm going to turn that off completely for the gradient mask, and we'll inject it back again later if we needed to. Okay, so that is fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to increase the density multiplier, which is very important. It will change the sim drastically. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of other things to reveal for you guys. It's just a matter of tweaking the various options, as you can see me doing, to get something interesting. And we're getting there. We've expanded this into this source now. So I think I know why. I'm gonna add this back, the masks and all. I want that in because it adds a lot of interesting breakups, and we want that. I'm gonna increase the noise amplitude even more. Yeah, I like the expansion now. You can see it's been broken up a lot more. Yeah, this is perfect. So I'm not gonna change I'm not going to change a lot now. I'm just going to increase the buoyancy of the entire sim to 6, and I'm going to add a vortex confinement to increase the details, and then I'm going to add a gas dissipate. I want to dissipate the temperature, the diffuse field, and I'm going to diffuse it 0.05, and then I want to be a little bit aggressive with the dissipation, so go 0.05, and then I'm going to animate the sourcing to be 3 up to frame 13, and then 1 to frame at frame 14. So it only uses 3 frames for the first 13 frames. I'm going to set the multi-grid to 2, and I'm going to lower this to 3 so we have more resolution. And I'm going to cast this, and we'll continue in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.